we were talking about national schools being for the poorer classes. It reminded me of Hegel's philosophy of religion, where it talks about Catholicism actually thriving within poverty. So I suppose it suited the Catholic Church that national schools became where the Catholic religion was based. Our next speaker is Paul Rowe from Educate Together. He's the CEO of Educate Together and needs little introduction, as he's a very familiar face on programmes detailing the ethos and access issues. Welcome, Paul.
Okay, obviously to manage this process we have a very short period of time to speak, and first of all, John's review of the history I think is very, very useful. At another time I'd like to debate some of that in detail, but that's really not the right time for this now in 5 minutes. The second thing, I'd just like to congratulate Elaine.
Yeah.
Elaine for her introduction in drawing the focus to social discrimination as part of the equality agenda in education. It is by far the most deep and profound discrimination in our education system, and we must keep focus on it. I'm speaking on behalf of Educate Together, and Educate Together has been working in this space now for the best part of 40 years. The founders of Educate Together were very clear in which they attempted to establish in the 1970s the original concept of the national school system, in which children of all backgrounds would have equality of access and esteem, irrespective of their social, cultural or religious backgrounds. That the schools would be child-centred in their approach to education, be co-educational and oppose role stereotyping, and also be run by in an atmosphere of participatory management. The question of equality in education in Ireland today has become increasingly focused during the period of our history, and today we would have 77 primary schools. Most all of them are very significantly oversubscribed, and there is a huge thirst for an educational environment from new parents, that their children are educated in an environment of equality and respect which will properly prepare them for the diverse and globalized world in which they're going to grow up. And this is what Educate Together is attempting to do. The questions of rights and equality in relation to the system as a whole are very significant in terms of the issues highlighted by Nikki Murphy and Rupesh and others over the past few years. But they simply reflect, and they're the tip of a huge iceberg of parents who have campaigned for Educate Together schools and have found eventually access to Educate Together schools. At the moment, we have 19 areas which are formally acknowledged by the Department of Education for new Educate Together schools, which we don't have the funding to progress. And our estimations are that we could easily open 25 schools at the moment to satisfy the extant demand for our services right now. So what the fundamental issue is here is that the system has to address the real demands, the real wishes and the real aspirations of the parents looking for education for their children. And our estimation, and I think this is borne out by recent behaviour and attitudes surveys, that up to 47% of parents would access the option of an equality-based primary school education for their children if that was available to them. And fundamentally what we're campaigning for at the moment in this election is that democratic demand, that legitimate demand, that demand which reflects human rights, the intellectual rights, the religious rights, and the fundamental rights of children in our society must be respected and must be empowered. We're campaigning at the moment for all candidates in this election to commit to a programme in which we can deliver a national network of quality-based schools of around 300 schools immediately, which will enable us to provide that option to all parents in the country within 30 minutes travel time in the morning. We're also campaigning for candidates to commit to a reciprocal 10% provision of secondary schools, and that this should be a properly funded programme in the next programme for government. John has highlighted the difficulty with the divestment programme from the Forum on Patronage and Pluralism. The fundamental problem with that is that there was zero funding attached to it, and it was all supposed to be achieved on fresh air. Currently, as I stand in here, Educate Together is opening 5 second-level schools, and we're in receipt of absolutely zero grants to carry out that work, which illustrates the real constraint on this type of activity and providing this type of change in our education system. The questions of legal change and constitutional change are something which the society as a whole in the next phase has to address. The inequalities are based on a triple lock. First of all, there is legislative provision in the Education Act, which underlines and legitimizes the circulars and regulations of the Minister. Then there is the constitutional provision, which John has adjusted. But the fundamental difficulty that we have encountered over the past 40 years is the fact that we have a privately owned but publicly funded system. And at the end of the day, change is affected by the fact that the real estate is owned by religious orders or religious bodies, and as a result of that, they have a complete control over the reconfiguration of the system. You all may have seen reference to the offer of a dilapidated school in Castlebar, which was supposed to be an appropriate way in which the state could adjust the legitimate rights of the people of Castlebar. What you may not know is that previous to that, we were offered a school up the mountains, 19 kilometres away from Killarney, which was supposed to be addressing the legitimate rights of the people of Killarney. If you think about it, this is medieval in concept, that those of the unbelievers must leave the city limits, and it's not very far. It isn't very far to go to say that they should wear a particular badge as they go. So this is a fundamental and absolute denial of the legitimate human rights of parents and their children. We're coming to the anniversary of the 1916 uprising and the far over-quoted commitment to cherishing the children of the nation equally. The fact that children's identity is not respected equally in our primary education system is a fundamental denial of their rights, their intellectual rights. It is an international embarrassment. Educate Together is now working in other countries, and it is utterly embarrassing to have to say that in Ireland today, still, that a child's identity is not equally respected in our state-funded education system. Children do not choose their parents. They do not choose their social background. They do not choose the religious views, whether well-founded or absurd, of their parents. It is absolutely impermissible in a modern democratic state that the government does not treat their rights and their identity equally in the provision of state-funded primary education system. And Educate Together, its founders 40 years ago, its members today, it's the teachers, parents, and its supporters are absolutely determined that this aberration of the principles of democracy in Ireland is going to be resolved, and is going to be resolved as quickly as possible. So thank you very much.